Stewart gets in, fights for more yardage. Stewart to the mouth of the goal line. Touchdown!
Wow, that's just pure Stewart right there.
That's a big-time run by Jonathan Stewart.
Welcome to Believe in Carolina Panthers here on Believe Podcast Networks. Do you believe? Rate and subscribe the show on all major podcast platforms and subscribe to our social media channels on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Video available weekly at youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
Do you believe?
And welcome into a brand new edition of Believe in Panthers, brought to you by Bet Online. Desmond Johnson from Tobacco Road Sports Radio and Panthers all-time leading rusher Jonathan Stewart in the house. It's the one after Super Bowl 59. The Eagles prevail 40-22 over the Kansas City Chiefs, preventing the historic three-peat that Kansas City was trying to do. We got a lot we're going to cover on this episode. If you see us on YouTube, go ahead and share it. X, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you might be getting this from. Here exclusively on the Believe Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Bet Online. And before we get into it, a quick word from our sponsors over at Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC. Bet Online continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. I'm going to stay away from that because my Carolina Tar Heels are struggling. They lost by like 20 last night to Clemson. And
them boys little in there. Them boys little in the paint.
Boy, they're so small. I got friends texting me like at 11 o'clock, like, is Hubert's job safe? I'm like, it better be, but I don't know, man.
Hey, listen, man. Sports ain't nobody safe.
No, nobody is safe. I mean, that is true.
Safe.
That's true. I mean, the dude just went to a Final Four 2 years ago in his first year, and now everyone's like, should he even be here? Like, is he a good coach? So I don't know. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the day. But Stu, I want to start before we actually get into the game itself. I saw you guys had a little mini reunion Super Bowl week down in New Orleans. So I want to kick it off with Stu's experience in New Orleans. I saw that you were on 4th and 1 with Cam Newton on his podcast with kind of a mini reunion with you, head coach Ron Rivera, Greg Olson. So I wanted to talk about that experience because it didn't seem like it was planned when it first started. You guys kind of crashed the set and hung out. Tell me how that was being around those guys again for the first time in a while.
Man, it was cool, man. It was a bit of a reunion in general amongst a bunch of football legends, football junkies, guys that know their football, know their stuff. It was a pleasure doing, the podcast / radio talk with Jake Delhomme, hearing his Cajun accent for countless hours was a treat, man. I actually told Jake, one day maybe I'll just move to Louisiana right next door to you because being around Jake Delhomme, you just find this energy that you've never known that you had. Because it was a couple long days. Got there Wednesday night. Thursday, we were at the convention center at the Radio Row. And, when you're, talking football constantly and seeing new faces, having to remember people's names that you haven't seen in years. That was my first time being at the Super Bowl since 2019 for any festivities. And so, it was a good time, man. Just seeing some faces that I haven't seen in so long. I got to see Jerome Bettis, Marcus Allen, Eric Dickerson, Emmitt Smith. These are guys that I grew up watching and basically falling in love with the game because of. And to see them and have them see me as part of, the crew in a sense, like, hey, what up, youngster? Yeah, I see you. You was doing your thing. Yeah. You was doing your thing. Sean Alexander, big bro. Always love seeing him. Lorenzo Neal. That's a guy.
Yeah.
Moose Johnson. We got a chance to talk to Moose Johnson of the Cowboys back when they were good. And then obviously, seeing the Panthers, Bryce Young, Steve Smith, Adam Thielen, and just being able to chat with these guys, and especially in a light where they finished strong, right? And for them to be, at the Super Bowl on Radio Row with a bright future ahead, it's just good energy. So it was a good time. But to answer your question, 4th and 1, that was I was just kind of basically everyone has their booth set up. Pat McAfee's right around the corner from us. Our location at the convention, we were right smack dab in the middle, so we were able to see basically everybody because they was walking right past us to get to wherever they were going at their stations. But 4th and 1, Cam Newton's podcast. They do a fantastic job. Their team of just collabing and getting people in there and getting them in and getting them out, because there's a lot of people that they wanted to talk to. So being able, I went back there. I don't even know what I was going back there for, but I ended up seeing Greg. I actually heard Greg talking, and I saw him. And then Coach Rivera sitting down. I'm like, oh, this is Cam's spot. So I just roll up in there, and then we back each other up, and then all of a sudden we have ourselves a reunion segment, which was really cool, man. Seeing Coach Ron Rivera, being able to give him a little bit of his flowers right there, and then obviously going into the 10-year anniversary. It's just being at the Super Bowl even. It's about to be 10 years already.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So just being able to reminisce, go down memory lane a little bit. Was pretty fun.
It's crazy how much as fans, speaking for the fans, how much we kind of take for granted how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl, just to participate in it. And part of it's we're spoiled because we've seen Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes get there like it's their birthright. Like they're just there like every year, it feels like. But it struck me this year that it's really hard to do this. It's hard to get here to this point, especially for Kansas City. At this point, they've literally played probably an extra season, like in terms of postseason games over the past 3 years. So
you're right.
They've got to be wore out. So I kind of get it. It did kind of feel like in that game that Kansas City just simply ran out of gas. Like it just, they got to the end and just couldn't will themselves to do. So we're going to get into the actual nuts and bolts of the game too. We're going to get to the Kendrick Lamar halftime show.
I can tell you what happened.
We'll get to all that too. I do want to address this before we go any further, though, since we're talking about the Panther Union and everything else. Yes, we're aware that there's a thing online with Cam Newton and Steve Smith where Cam Newton was on, I believe it was Travis Hunter's podcast, trying to give him some advice. Clip came out of it. Smitty saw it, responded to it in terms of the comment Cam made. It kind of got taken out of context to a certain extent because I saw the longer clip of it. And we're not going to go into real detail about it. We talked about this. It's like, that's not what we do anyway. Like even that kind of stuff has happened previously. We don't really linger on that kind of stuff. We want to focus on the future. Like we want to focus on what are the Panthers doing going forward? Like what's going to happen in free agency? What's going to happen in the draft? How are we building this franchise back up so we can be in the Super Bowl again? So we're not going to really linger on that stuff. Anything you want to drop regarding that topic, Stu? Or
yeah, obviously, I think Cam's point to Travis Hunter was basically to prepare him as a number 1 draft pick of what to expect. And everyone, every now and then says things, the wrong way or didn't intend for it to be said certain ways. And, I have fault to that as well. Ask my wife. You know what I'm saying? Like I might say something. I'll say something that I don't even know that I said a certain way or a certain tone, and she's like, "Hold up, wait a minute. You gotta retract that." And I'm like, "Wait, what did I just say?" Oh man, I didn't mean it like that. Ah, dang, you're right. I shouldn't have said it that way. So we're all human, right? And when you're in the public eye, the way Cam is, you have a responsibility, especially in his case, the profession that he's in, doing a fantastic job in media and broadcasting and coverage and giving his takes, which he has a lot of good takes that a lot of people, get stirred up about. And in this one particular, he's giving advice to Travis Hunter. And really, like, if it were to have gone the way it should have been. It should have been something like, hey, listen, Travis, when you're coming to a team with a record or a tough record, such as the Carolina Panthers coming off a 2-14 season, understand this, right? Every locker room has dogs ready to hunt. You know, I was there when Cam arrived. We had some Pro Bowlers, you know, Thomas Davis, D'Angelo Williams, you know, Ryan Khalil, Jordan Gross, Charles Johnson, Steve Smith, right?
Y'all were just 12-4,
like future Hall of Famer, right? And you have guys that have already been to the Super Bowl, right? So the record doesn't tell you about the heart in that locker room. You know what I'm saying? So when you're going into a situation like that, here's what young stars need to understand. You might be joining a team that struggled, but look deeper. You know what I'm saying? When Cam came to us, we had those guys, some proven winners who just needed the missing piece. And Cam was a missing piece, very valuable piece to this franchise. And he had turned this franchise around in a lot of ways and has made an impact, not just on the team, but in the NFL, right? So don't judge the whole room by the record. And that's what I think is a better way of preparing a guy like Travis Hunter in the sense of, hey, you're a #1 draft pick, go in there with a level head and be prepared to just put your head down and work. You know, when it comes to being a #1 pick, you're going into a situation where you're possibly in a rebuilding phase, right? You're not coming to save everybody. You're coming to be the piece that completes the puzzle. That's why this game of football is so special, because it's the ultimate team sport. We already had winners in that locker room. Guys would be, you know, guys that were in Super Bowls, guys that have been Pro Bowlers. So I think the words that came out of his mouth didn't necessarily align with the sensitivity of who was in that locker room. You know, and at the end of the day, it's not about, you know, the number of losers or winners. It's about guys coming together collectively and finding that spark that brings everything together. And that takes time. And as we've seen, you know, there's guys in that 2010 locker room, 2011 locker room that were in the same locker room as the Super Bowl 2015, 2016 season. Right. So I think that is more so the clarity that should have been had. But as you can tell, I had time to think about this. Cam on the spot trying to give Travis Hunter some advice, which was thorough, you know what I'm saying, in the sense, hey, look, go in there with the expectation of this, right? Like, I played quarterback, you're a DB, the instant impact might take some time. Like, and to that, again, it's a rebuilding situation. Your mindset should never be to go in there and save everybody. Your job is to elevate however you can by doing your job.
And I will say this, and we'll move on, because again, we're not going to spend the whole episode talking about the well, it's not even really back and forth because Cam hasn't responded yet. I assume he's going to respond on his episode later on this week, 4th and 1. But I think for me, it's more like you just said, you had time to think about this and kind of prepare your words. Cam speaks more off the cuff than probably any former athlete I can think of, whether it's on his pod, live, on First Take, whatever it is. He just says what comes to mind, and he doesn't necessarily filter himself, but he's always
but I think also too, like, shout out to Steve Smith, you know, for standing up for guys that most likely won't say anything, right?
Yeah.
And same to Charles Johnson, right?
I saw that story,
you know, because that's what it's all about. Those are the type of guys that were on the team that laid the foundation. Guys that will speak up. That's what made our locker room special. Was that it was when things were said wrong, people held those people accountable. And I think that still resonates to this day. Like, hey man, hold on now. And shout out to Steve for saying it and putting it in a bow. You know, I thought he didn't say anything wrong. I think, you know, what's wrong is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Certain things you just don't say, and you have to be mindful, especially when you're, you know, on that, you know, stage and you're in that spotlight. You know, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with all that stuff, and if anything crazy happens going forward, we might address it. But we didn't want you guys to think that we were just going to ignore what was going on with the Panther fam. We don't like Panther.
But I will say Cam Newton absolutely and genuinely does care about his teammates. That's how he played. He played because he played with that heart on his chest, and it was for him. It was his heart, but it was for the collective. And that was my view of Cam. He just wanted to win, and he knew he needed everybody around him to win. So I'm going to go to bat for him in the sense of what he is as a person, and what he stands for. And in this situation, I'm pretty sure he's going to clear the air and clear the space. But this
that's why I didn't really want to, because I responded. Yeah,
this is just one of the situations, I think, because we all fall short in this area sometimes, where we're just saying the wrong thing with somewhat of the right intentions, right? And just trying to give this young man Travis Hunter some advice. 2-14 season, that's a bad record.
That was a bad year for Panther fans. That was a hard year. Yeah,
it was a hard year.
Mm.
And so that's where his mind was registered. And so I think, the sensitivity to the actual players that were on that team that he ended up playing with for several years, I think that's where the offense was drawn.
And again, I don't think he was referring to everybody on the team as being losers or wherever, how some people are trying to take that small clip. All I'll say is go watch the full episode. It's Travis Hunter's podcast. Travis Hunter, we haven't even started talking about the draft yet. He's my number one guy on my board I want to get for the Panthers, but he's going to be long gone by the time we get to pick 8. And I don't know if Dan Morgan's in the mood to trade up again in the first round to go get a player. Although this dude's generational. I saw Warren Sapp talking about him. Travis Hunter, man, he would fill so many different needs on the Carolina Panthers if they could figure out a way to get him. And I'm hoping there's a run on quarterbacks at the very beginning of the draft. And then maybe, hey, Dan might not want to trade up to 1. Well, if he wants to trade up 3 spots to 5, because Travis Hunter's sitting there, what would you be interested in something like that?
My mindset is whatever the Philadelphia Eagles have created, I want that. I want a defensive line that is indestructible.
Let's get into this game because okay, so Super Bowl 59. This game reminded me, and I've told you, I do stuff up here in the Triad of North Carolina. A lot of stuff we do are live sports regarding high school, and I'm really knee deep in the high school football game up here. That game reminded me of a high school football game. When you get a situation where it's like late in the season, one of the teams like 8-0, they've been beating the brakes off everybody, and they run across the squad in their conference. It's like 2-6. They can barely put things together. And it's just a beatdown. Like the whole, I was waiting on a running clock in the Super Bowl. Like literally, that's what I was kind of looking at. Like, it's 40-6. Like, what is going on here? And the only other time I could think of where the Chiefs have looked like that was in that Tampa Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like where Pat Mahomes literally running for his life, like the whole game. But I want to say that Tampa blitzed a lot. And I just found out today, it's not one time.
But you remember what I said last week?
Yeah.
Them dogs up front, that defensive line, they don't need to blitz,
bro.
And the Chiefs ain't seen nothing like it.
It looked like there was 8 dudes on the line, like coming after Pat Mahomes. It ran like it literally would be he'd step back in his progression, and there's like a dude over here, there's a dude right here, and it got to the point I'm screaming. So he was like, "Don't step up. If you step up, you're going to get sacked." And like he would step right to the arm.
What really did him in was whenever they went OTB with the running back, when the running back checks over the ball, why are you doing that? They are in a 4-man rush, and all they're doing is sitting back and covering. You got him over the ball, which means the backer is going to just cover him. And if he knows that, there's no outlet, you know what I'm saying? So there should have been way more free releases. There should have just been, you know what I'm saying?
They never adjusted.
I don't know.
They never adjusted for some reason, which is weird for Andy Reid offense. They never figured it out. And then on the other side, they did a good job stopping your boy Saquon. He didn't get off like we thought he might.
Yeah, they threw
some yards.
They threw all their eggs in one basket.
And that ain't a bad basket.
Which we talked about last week. You got to choose one. You can't choose both.
But I think they were like, well, let's see if Jalen Hurts can beat us. That was kind of the narrative going into it. And a
Shout out
lot of
to
narratives
him.
shifted after this game. There's not a whole lot to talk about in the game itself. It was really just Eagles all night, and the score was kind of deceiving because it was not 40-22. Like it was
40-0.
It was I mean it was 34-0. Like with 6 minutes to go in the third. I think it was 40-6 in the fourth. Late in the fourth.
Eagles put the depth chart in the game. And say, hey, y'all, go get some Super Bowl love. Cooper DeJean. Remember what I was telling you? Cooper DeJean?
On his birthday. That was his birthday too, with the interception, pick 6. Like, you know what it reminded me of? And we haven't had this in a while. For the younger folks out there, again, I just turned 47 a couple Sundays ago. And when I was a kid, the Super Bowl was a blowout more often than not. Like there was a stretch where the NFC was blowing out the AFC team every year as a kid, whether it was the Redskins, the Cowboys, the Giants, the 49ers, the Bears. Like if you got to the Super Bowl and it was the NFC team, you assumed they were going to win by 25. Like they were just so much farther apart. And it'd be like John Elway in Denver or the Bills or whoever that got there over and over again and would just getting blown out. We haven't had that really in the past decade. A lot of these games have been close. We just had an overtime game a couple years ago in the Super Bowl. This is the first time it was really a blowout in the Super Bowl in a long time, and it caught a lot of people off guard. I think Kansas City was favored by like 1 or something coming into this game. I don't think anybody expected them to get blown out the way they did. So first thing is first, Jalen Hurts, because of this game, did he elevate himself into top 3 status? Because I'm tired of folks elevating guys like Joe Burrow for beating Pat Mahomes like 4 years ago in a playoff game and losing a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls in the past 3 years and has 1 under his belt under the age of 30. Like, is it time to start anointing Jalen Hurts as that dude, at least in the NFC?
Yeah. No, right now I have to go Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts.
Over Josh Allen, the reigning MVP?
Yep.
I mean, results matter to me. Like results matter in the end.
My man had a bad interception, which was very uncharacteristic, right? But the remainder of the game, he took care of the ball and he made split-second decisions. The 77 yards that he rushed for were the plays of the game. Outside of that dime he threw to Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
Good Lord, dog.
Yeah.
He
can throw. People
that was probably the best Super Bowl throw of all time.
People think he can't throw. He can throw. Jalen Hurts can ball, man.
I'm tired of this narrative. We already talked about what wins games, right? Scoring touchdowns,
stop the run. Yeah,
scoring touchdowns and stopping the run. We talked about that with Jalen Hurts. Last week? Or 2 weeks ago?
For kind of most of the season, really, in terms of what he does. Yeah,
and he's been doing that. So, what else do you want out of a guy that's underneath the center? You know, if you want a field general, and that's exactly how he presents himself. He says all the right things. He does all the right things. He dresses well. My man's poised as all get out. Everybody loves him. And then you add Saquon Barkley to the mix, right? Them 25 carries. Now, he might not have had his, typical 100-yard day, but for them to commit to the run throughout the course of the game, in my opinion, says a lot about who they are as an offense and as a team. They don't veer. Yeah. They don't blink. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you want out of an offense. Yeah, we might have just got 2 yards there, 3 yards there, but it's just part of our game plan. We're gonna still be physical. We're gonna still wear you out, and we're still gonna have to make you commit to this run, because when you commit to the run, that's where we get to hit you over the top.
Yeah, it wore them out. It felt like they wore Kansas City down. And really, from the beginning, the sense I was catching was that Kansas City ran out of gas. Like they've played so many games, and Philly's defense kind of just figured them out. Gronk kind of said it on the post game. I didn't expect him to say it the way he did, but he was basically like, "Yeah, that's what we did in Tampa when we beat him in the Super Bowl. We just kind of just beat the brakes off of Pat Mahomes and let his receivers kind of run around free and just let him throw interceptions to us." And that's kind of what he did. Like for most of the night, that's the worst game I've probably seen Pat Mahomes ever play. Real talk, He was sporadic. He was all over the place. They didn't move the ball past the 50 until halfway in the third quarter, I think it was. When was the last time you could think of a Chiefs offense that couldn't get past the 50-yard line on any team? And they just couldn't They couldn't release. They couldn't get any kind of separation whatsoever. They couldn't run the ball. I think they had like 2 rushes at a certain point, like towards halftime. They just took completely out of what they were going to do. So shout out to the Philly defense. They did all that without blitzing, not one time. I think there's only been a couple of times in the Super Bowl era where a team did not blitz throughout the game, and every time that team has won the game. So we've talked about Bryce Young and other quarterbacks this year about how they've been against the blitz and how people have been sending these exotic blitzes and things of that sort. Philly just said, yo, we're going with our front 4. Keep an eye out for what's his name? Sweat.
Josh Sweat is a dog.
He's
Josh
a
Sweat,
free agent, Stu. Do we go chase this dude? Because we could use a little, we could use a little of that over in Carolina.
If I had the money, I'd pay him.
Dan Morgan, let's open up the vault. Let's go talk to David Tepper, figure this out, because he is a free agent coming up. And I've seen people trying to attach him to us. They're like, no, I don't think we can afford him. Hey, man, this is about to be the interesting part.
After that game, that bag gonna be heavy.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
He added
that
some
bag
weight
is
to it
gonna
for
be
sure.
heavy.
So on the flip side of this, it felt like we went.
Oh, man, let's talk about Nolan Smith.
Oh yeah, you want to talk about Nolan Smith? Yeah,
Nolan Smith was bringing the hat every single run play.
Yeah,
the guards did not stand a chance.
You know, when you get to a point where the other team doesn't like, they want to run because they don't get hit. That's how the Chiefs start looking.
That little joker right there is about to blast me in my chest. He was doing it every single play, every run play. That's why they couldn't run the ball.
You know what? We said this narrative. I think you said it last week where the Eagles played this Chiefs team 2 years ago, and I think
they remembered.
They remembered, and like somebody told me on one of my shows last week that Jalen Hurts had a picture in his phone on his screensaver of the end of Super Bowl 57, where the confetti's falling over. He's sitting on the field and he's just kind of watching the Chiefs celebrate, and he's been looking at that every day. And they did kind of play with their hair on fire on Sunday, like it felt like they were out to prove something. It felt like the Chiefs were waiting on something to happen. Yeah. And it never did. And then when they started finally moving the ball, it was too late. So shout out to the Eagles. Again, there's not a whole lot to talk about with the actual game. They did what they're going to do. But now's the fallout, because we were about to anoint Pat Mahomes the GOAT if he won this game. We were about to say Andy Reid was the best coach of all time if they won this game. They didn't. And now what's happened, I was sitting there looking, I was like, now this changes the whole conversation, because now Pat Mahomes is 3-2 in Super Bowls. And the 2 he lost, they got blown out in. Like, Tom Brady never got blown out in a Super Bowl, like, ever. Like, all of us were close games. Like, Joe Montana never got beat in a Super Bowl. Like, you know what I'm saying? He's 4-0. The narrative now in my mind has shifted. Where do you put Pat Mahomes now? Because, yeah, you have the 3 Super Bowl wins, but you also have these 2 blowout losses on your resume. You're 3-2 overall in the Super Bowl. You got a guy like Tom Brady who lost, 3 times in the Super Bowl, twice to the Giants.
Yeah. Remember,
you got Montana who's 4-0. Like,
everything was prefaced around, quote unquote, if Patrick Mahomes three-peats. He didn't three-peat. So that means he got some work to do for sure, right? Even more so. You know, the carelessness with the ball. I don't care if you're under pressure the way you've been. You got to take care of the ball. Like, the field position, that second interception that he threw, the house call, that right there is unacceptable in a Super Bowl, right? So, but we talked about that. Like, he's one of those guys where under pressure, under stress, he gonna turn the ball over. That's just kind of who he is. And so there's certain things that he still has to get better at, right? And that can be scary, because that means he can still get better. Or did he? I don't necessarily think he maxed out. For all of those that follow me on Twitter, I threw a controversial opinion out there.
Yeah, I saw that.
But there's some sanity to it.
It's not guaranteed. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier on. It's not guaranteed.
It's so hard to get to the Super Bowl, and I think right now, he's showing that he's human. Andy Reid showing that he's human, and all good things come to an end. And unfortunately, Andy Reid is not going to be coaching this game for a long time, especially after that game. I think that does a lot to a coach like that, and So, and then you got to talk about the roster moves and the salary cap. There's a lot of things that you can do, for the near future, but it's going to hurt you on the back end, right? So, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to make up? And I think I just seen that Travis Kelce is retiring.
What?
Is that right?
I don't know. Hold on.
Hold on now.
I hadn't heard anything about that. Let me go check.
Travis Kelce, are you retiring?
I don't see it trending anywhere.
Maybe that was his fool's goal.
Maybe. I know that.
No, that was
Mahomes said, I know Mahomes was saying he thought he had another year or two in him. No, I don't see anything about that. But,
okay, all right.
But keep an eye on that because I mean, he'll probably take a week or so to think about it and decide he wants to come back or whatever he's going to do. But yeah, this was the 1 year Travis Kelce wasn't really the main part of the offense for the Chiefs and kind of struggled a little bit. We say that and they went 15-2 in the regular season, and really, I mean, their luck kind of just ran out. They ran against a team where they couldn't play a close game. On the flip side, the Eagles are set up to do this multiple times. Like it feels like the Eagles are in a better position in the NFC to get back than the Chiefs are. And we've talked about this throughout the season. The Chiefs have to deal with the Ravens, the Bills. Denver's going to be up and coming. Just in their own division. The Chargers.
And then Pete Carroll down there might be doing something funky with the Raiders.
I mean, I would not be surprised to see Aaron Rodgers in Las Vegas as a starting quarterback next year. Like there's so much more going on the AFC side. It's going to be so much harder to get back.
If I'm Aaron Rodgers, Aaron, go ahead and go down there to Raiders. Go to Raider Nation.
Jets already said they're not really bringing him back. So that's for the Garrett Wilson folks on the Panthers side that think we're going to trade for Garrett Wilson. No, they're not letting Garrett Wilson go. Go ahead and let that dream go away. But the Eagles are set up to do this, especially in the NFC where there's not really a lot of resistance right now. Maybe Washington coming up.
The Commanders and the Detroit Lions. Okay.
Detroit.
Yes.
I don't know what to do with Minnesota yet.
They got money to spend. So they got money to spend and they got a roster that is growing and that's young. And last year, the Detroit Lions had about half their roster on IR. So, and they still was in the playoffs and everybody was like, we about to do this. So next year, I think honestly, Detroit will be a team to be feared. And I'm going to say it. Yes, I'm going to say it.
I mean, yeah, Green Bay. Don't forget about Green Bay.
No.
Us. I'm going to throw us in there. We're on the up and coming. We figured out our quarterback situation. We got some money.
Don't forget about the Seahawks.
Seahawks are still there. So that's the beauty of the NFL, the parity. Mm-hmm. Like, because we can sit and do all this. And I never got a chance to go back to our August episode. I was going to go back and see who we actually picked. I think we picked Kansas City, Detroit in the end with me when Skylar was still with us. I think we voted out that. But I want to say we really argued Kansas City, Philly for a bit. And I think we were like, no, we don't want to do that because we just saw that like 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. But they were there. I remember us thinking this is going to end up being Philly, like the way this is falling out. But we can see Philly, Kansas City next year. This could be the new Cleveland Cavalier, Golden State Warriors, like where they just see each other every year for like 3 or 4 years. Like, wouldn't surprise me at all. But shout out to Philly. They did what we didn't think they could do. And like I said, I was not going to bet against Pat Mahomes in December or January or especially February. And finally, somebody made some money off of betting off of Pat Mahomes failing, because it don't happen very often. So, and then the whole Mahomes Brady conversation. Keep in mind, Tom Brady went a whole decade without going to the Super Bowl. Like they were separated out. We could be in a stretch where Pat Mahomes doesn't get to the Super Bowl for a little bit. If he continues to get to the Super Bowl, that GOAT conversation is going to come back around. But as it stands right now, I probably have him at 3. Brady, Montana, Mahomes. And even that, with Mahomes, there are other quarterbacks. I mean, Troy Aikman's won 3 Super Bowls. You know what I mean? Like, Jay Bradshaw won 4 Super Bowls. Like, now he's kind of in the he's back in the swim pool again, where before he was kind of standing outside of it. Somebody pushed him back in. So now he's back in that pool. So
get back in the chat, boy.
Go get back in the kiddie pool, man. He's 29. He's 29. So we'll see. And we'll keep an eye on the Kelce thing too. Let's move real quick over into the halftime show. Kendrick Lamar. Mm-hmm. I had to watch it again last night, and then that took me down a rabbit hole of watching halftime shows. Me and my wife were just sitting there on YouTube watching Super Bowl halftime shows. Where do you rank what you saw? First of all, do you understand what you saw? Because that seemed to be the issue yesterday online. I was online. People were like, either I loved it or I hated it. It was the worst halftime show ever. I don't understand anything that's going on in this, this halftime show.
Let's put it this way. That was a performance, an opportunity to make a statement.
That was art.
And if you don't understand it and can't respect it, that means you not like us.
Yeah. He's probably talking about you. Like in that song. I think that's why so many people were offended. They're like clutching the pearls. Like, is he talking about us? Or is he talking about them? Like, who's he talking about? But not the whole choreography. Like, there's so many. I told my wife last time we were watching it, I was like, a lot of times people plan out their Super Bowl performance for that one moment when you're watching it live. I don't think Kendrick did that. I think Kendrick did this specifically so that we would go back and rewatch this like over and over again. And I've already watched it now twice. I watched it again last night and already picked up stuff I didn't see the first time.
Yeah,
like,
because how many
that was Serena? I didn't know for sure.
How many times do you go back and rewatch a Super Bowl performance?
That's where I'm heading to, because I was going to ask you best halftime shows, because the best ones are ones I've gone back and rewatched like multiple times. And this one I've already watched now twice. Dude, that whole when that album came out, I was like, that has to end the Super Bowl halftime show. Like, it has to be that song. Like, it's written to end the halftime show, like the way it is. And he did it. He ended it with
turn the TV out.
Yeah. And the whole thing with him and Drake, that was the thing I was seeing from like old hip hop heads. They're like, why didn't he do some of his older stuff? Like, he just spent the whole time trolling Drake. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what he did. That was the whole point. Like, he trolled Drake. He played his new stuff. The older stuff, like All Right and Mad City, stuff like that, he did that already. He was on the Dre halftime show 2 years ago, and he did those then. Why would he do the same song over again? Like, can't win for losing. People be like, oh, why are you doing your old stuff?
He played Humble.
He did DNA, and he played 3 or 4 songs off the new album, which just won 5 Grammys like last week. Like, why would you?
You got to realize too, man. Like, these are artists. Yeah, they are rappers, and they look like people that you've never seen before, or that you don't click with. But at the end of the day, they consider themselves as artists, and so do the arts world, right? And so this was an opportunity to put on display something bigger than music, right? And if that goes over your head, then go Google it. We don't have time to talk about it right here. and it's not rocket science. You know, like, if you watched what was going on and you seen Samuel L. Jackson dressed up as Uncle Sam.
Brilliant.
If you were offended by what was being said and whatnot, you are free to feel offended. and if you didn't feel offended and you felt celebrated, you were free to feel celebrated.
The vibe I caught, because I went around social media yesterday, that was real. More people talked about the halftime show than they did the game yesterday, like in terms of how they felt and everything else. The main vibe I caught from it was that there's a segment of people that felt not included in the halftime show, and that's why they're upset. They're not saying it that way, but that's kind of what it is. Like, they're watching it and they feel like they're outsiders in what's going on, because they don't know what's happening. They either have been following the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef, or didn't know the dude just won 5 Grammys or whatever.
I can tell you who wouldn't be
like us somewhere.
I can tell you who wouldn't feel included if Taylor Swift was performing.
See, right there. And see, and that's kind of the thing. It's like, bring back Metallica and that kind of stuff. I'm like, man, let Kendrick just shine, man. Because at first, I didn't think he had a catalog to even do a Super Bowl halftime show, and he did really well. Now, I say all that, and it's not even in my top 3 like best halftime shows.
Yeah,
like,
it's not.
There's so many others, and me and my wife went down a rabbit hole last night watching them. I'll give you mine. You give me yours. Give me your top 3 best all-time halftime shows as it stands right now after Super Bowl 59. MJ. Dude. And that was the first one. Yeah. And then I saw a doctor, the producer was like, they had a cue where they weren't supposed to start the music until he moved his glasses, but Michael Jackson liked to control the audience. So he's just standing there for 2 straight minutes. And like, people think Usher and Chris Brown and these other dudes are on the same level as Michael Jackson. I've never seen grown women passing out at a Chris Brown concert, like fainting at the sight of him. You know what I mean? Like, Michael Jackson was on this whole different thing, and that was the first one, because because Super Bowl halftime shows before were like marching bands and stuff. It wasn't a big deal, and then and Living Color actually changed all that. If you don't know the story,
that was 93, right?
Michael Jackson was 93. Yeah. So in 92. Fox decided they were going to do a live 30-minute episode of In Living Color during the halftime show where it was going to be like the Ohio State marching band or something doing it. They usually didn't do anything during halftime. And so many people left and went to Fox to watch and live in color during halftime that going forward, they decided to do a halftime show during the Super Bowl. And the first one was Michael Jackson. So you get the biggest person they were very upset. Live in color took they took like 100 million viewers like away for 30 minutes. So it was genius on Fox and Keenan and Way's part. But that started the halftime things. This has only been going on for 30 years. So you got MJ.
Leonard, you was watching Michael Jackson too?
Yeah. See, he said
I was like 6 years old and I still remember.
93, I was like a freshman in high school.
I was a Michael Jackson head, boy. I love Michael Jackson, man.
Man, he killed it. I mean, because Michael Jackson stage show, he did at the Super Bowl. So you got Michael Jackson. I got him in mine as well. I got him as I got Mike at number 3 on mine. So who else you got besides MJ?
Purple Rain, Purple Rain.
You know what? And I have that as number 2 on mine. And I watched that last night, and I think everyone remembers him playing Purple Rain in the rain on electric guitar. That was if you go back and watch that performance, half of his performance is cover. It's cover songs. Yeah. He did Foo Fighters. He did Jimi Hendrix. He did Tina Turner.
Homage.
He hardly did any of his own songs. Yeah. But when that Purple Rain hit, I had to shush my wife. I was like, just let him do his thing. And he starts doing Purple Rain hits a nerve with me. Like, because I mean, that's my thing. And Prince to me is one of my favorite guitarists of all time. So I have him at 2. So you got MJ, you got Prince. Who you got, or who's your third one? Because I don't think you were doing this in order or anything.
No, I did do that in order.
Okay, so MJ 1, Prince 2. And I've got them in reverse.
La-di-da-di-da.
That's my number 1. That halftime show was for us. That was our halftime show. Like, I saw so many 35, 40-year-olds. It was like, yeah, that took me back to college, or that took me back to high school, or that I love that. And the way when we rewatched it last night, I immediately, because we watched it right after the Kendrick Lamar one, so we watched them back to back. You can immediately hear an audio difference. The way the audio was mixed in that Dre set for all of them is so clear and crystal. And I'm anal about audio stuff like that. And Dre's one of my
he's the best, one of the best producers in the game
of all time.
All time.
Still putting it out.
If you actually put it like, I mean, Dre, from the engineering standpoint, the best of all time.
Yeah, his ear is unmatched. Like,
the best.
You can hear things that in a beat, and like I'll go back and just listen to
creativity.
Perfectionist.
I'd have to go and I have to go Timberland.
He's in my top 3 producers. It's Dre, Timberland, and then honestly, I'm a huge Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis fan. Like Janet Jackson, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm huge into that. That goes back to Prince, and they were with them in the time, back in the day. So like, I'm huge on instrumental, like guitar stuff.
I like Aerosmith too. Forest City.
Aerosmith was a good one. You know what? We saw one last night that popped up that we forgot about. It was Bruno Mars, Beyonce, and Coldplay.
Coldplay is all right. Coldplay.
It was a good show. Yeah. It was really, Beyonce broke out, did Formation. Bruno Mars was there. Like, I mean, it was a good one. I was like, I forgot about this one. And there was an Usher from like 2 years ago, I think it was.
Forest City. What's your top 3?
She's got Aerosmith is my favorite one. And CJA says I personally like the ones where you have multiple artists. Metallica was brought up. I've seen a lot of people ask for Metallica to come back. My question is, if you're Drake, because they've asked him before to do this and he's declined it. Because the Super Bowl artists don't get paid for doing the halftime show. If you're Drake and they come back, if Jay-Z comes to them now, it's like, hey man, you want to do the halftime show now? Do you do it if you're Drake?
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, he's got more hits to do it with.
That could be your saving grace right there.
You come back.
We're gonna be singing every single song.
I mean,
we're gonna be singing every single song with that Drake.
I can't imagine how it feels like to have 126 million people singing along to this song that just won a Grammy about you. Like, it's so crazy.
This is how I see it, man. In the artistry world, man. Yes, Drake, you lost.
Yes, it's dumb.
And mainly because Kendrick took a diss song and made it so doggone catchy that everybody's gonna remember it.
Everyone. No, even if you don't know who Kendrick Lamar is, you know that.
People won't pay attention to the backstory, to nothing. They're gonna catch on to the trend. They're gonna catch on to whatever, and they're gonna be like, yeah, whatever.
I was
Drake,
trying
you
to
lost.
trying to
But
put it out like
did he really lose?
imagine if Tupac had performed "Hit 'Em Up" at the 1997 Super Bowl. Like literally,
Yeah.
like it's kind of like, or imagine Nas doing "Ether" at the Super
Yeah.
Bowl. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like that doesn't happen. And like he was able to construct this whole show around this one song. And some people are mad about it, but most people are. I'm like, this is the most diabolical trolling I've ever seen in my
It's
life.
petty.
Like,
It's toxic. It's terrible. It's bad for the coach. It's bad for the world. Like, we trying to pour love into the community. Everything he did was diabolical.
He torched this dude. He completely torched this dude. Like, it's
everything
crazy.
that
Like,
he
I don't know what
did
Drake does.
was crazy when it comes to Drake, right? But the messaging and how he did it for the Super Bowl and the opportunity and how he kind of gave a second message, that's what it's really all about.
And I think in the end, that's what's going to come out. The Drake stuff is the frosting. There's other stuff in that performance that has to do with like what's going on in the world today and our country today and politics today and social issues. Like all that stuff's crammed in there too. But you got to go back and watch it a couple times, like to get the full meal. So
Squirrel. Did you see Luka and LeBron last night?
No. I had an A&T game I had to do that ran late.
Real dangerous.
Let's see. Because I mean, the Lakers
Luka out there sitting like a alley-oop dispenser.
That's why they wanted Mark Williams. See, now you got me started on Mark Williams and the Hornets, and I got to talk about that in an hour on my show because they sent Mark Williams back. Apparently, he played a game with the Hornets, and then the next day failed the physical. So I don't understand how that works, but so we'll get into that. The Hornets are a mess. Like they're a complete mess. I think they're tanking for Cooper Flagg. They just don't want to say it out loud. So the kid over at Duke. So but we're going to take a quick, well, not a quick break, like we're on the radio or something. We're going to take a break, a hiatus. I was thinking about it. You missed a couple shows. Skylar missed some shows. Skylar had a baby. So he hasn't been back since he had the baby. But I've basically done a Believe in Panthers episode every week since August. This is February 11th. So it's like a hard 6 months of just doing the episodes. And again, we went through another losing season with the Panthers, the playoffs, the Super Bowl, everything else. I need to refresh. So I wrote down the dates for the next upcoming important dates here as we get out of here. Franchise tags start February the 18th. Keep an eye on that because they might use that on JC Horn, maybe. I was trying to think of somebody else on the team that might get the franchise tag, but maybe they use it on him. I don't know if they will. And we didn't get a chance to mention it when you were there with Jake, if I'm not mistaken. You guys were talking to Adam Thielen, if I'm not mistaken. He kind of dropped that he will be back next year. It was kind of up in the air if he was going to return or not. So Adam Thielen will be returning back to the Panthers. The free agency period opens at 4 p.m. March the 12th. We'll be back probably the beginning of March to kind of go through guys getting pointed at us, needs, that kind of thing. I love that free agency now is before the draft instead of after, because we can kind of fill some needs before we even go into the draft and kind of go BPA. So that's 4 p.m. March 12th. The NFL draft is Thursday, April 24th through Saturday, April 26th. So we'll have a whole month to kind of figure out the needs for the Panthers. And I'd like to, during that period, bring on some draft gurus, some college football analysts, Joe DeLeon in particular, from the Joe and Blake show that they have. Very good. I've had him on my shows a couple of times. He knows college football better than almost anybody I know. So he'll be able to pick out some guys that would fit the Panthers. And some other Panther content creators, because I've seen people attach players to us. Ted McMillan from Arizona, Mason Graham from Michigan, the cornerback Will Johnson from Michigan. I'm starting to see get attached to us. There's some guys getting attached to us at 8, but again, Dan Morgan has shown they're willing to move around on the board. I wouldn't be surprised if he trades back. So we'll get into all the nuts and bolts of all that stuff and get back to more Panther stuff when we return from our hiatus. Anything you want to throw in, Stu, before we bone out here?
No, man. This is a good. I think there's been a lot of cool stories that have transpired over this season, and even today, the stuff with Cam, the crazy talk and whatnot. But I think we have a lot of good things on the horizon. And I'm excited about it. Can't wait for the Carolina Panthers to reconvene and continue on making a statement. Next year is going to be fun in the NFC South. You got Bryce Young, Michael Penix Jr.
Oh,
That's going to be what we get to look forward to twice a year. Baker Mayfield obviously is a guy, and we have a chance to really make a statement. Because look, the Carolina Panthers almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes.
Okay, and so everybody remember that. That's what we have to hold. That's what we have.
That's a great
hat on.
That's great to put on the end. Yeah, we almost beat both the teams in the Super Bowl.
We almost beat both of them teams. So as we continue to soul search and get guys in that locker room that will absolutely give us a chance to make a comeback next year, the puzzle pieces, you know what I'm saying, to fit within the system together nicely. Because there's certain guys in there that might fit other places, right? Just not in that locker room. So I think we have, exciting time ahead of us. Dan Morgan, I can't wait to see you lead that boy.
And I'm already getting hits on X from people saying Jay Stu had the best take on Cam's comments that I've seen so far. He gets it, and you're already being called the mediator. So maybe maybe you can step in and stop this Panther on Panther crime that we're trying to not let bubble over here in Charlotte. So
pride, like J. Cole said, man, pride is the devil, and I'm a firm believer in the number one killer of any relationship or friendship is pride. Biblically, that's why God is so he's so against it, and he does not want that for us to have against each other. Egos, got to put them aside. And sometimes, as humans, it's just in our nature. So for me, I like to always remind myself of that because it's so easy to climb into that basket. So just do your best, man.
I love that somehow, I don't know how we managed to do it, but somehow we were able to mention Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and J. Cole in the same episode. Like, that wasn't planned. Like, we just somehow, it just happened.
Pride is the devil.
So we're gonna get out from there. Again, we're gonna be off for a couple of weeks. We'll be back to get you guys set for free agency. We'll have some surprises along the way too. I'm gonna try to bring in some guests for us to kind of bounce off of and just get some outside opinions on what do the Panthers need. Like, I mean, we still have a roster with a lot of holes in it. Like, what do we need first? What's going to be the plan here? And I'm so ready to see Dan Morgan's vision kind of start taking shape in terms of what he wants to do with his second offseason. Now that he's seen what holes we have, like what deficiencies we have, and what do we have that we're going to work with. We know we got Chuba. We kind of figured out with Bryce. We've got bright spots here on the team. You got things coming back like Derek Brown. Like, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of positivity going on in Charlotte for the first time, really, of the David Tepper era. Now I can think of. It's the first offseason going into it where I really feel genuinely good about where we are. Like, there's not a lot of question marks for major things like who's the coach, who's the quarterback going to be, like things like that. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Definitely follow us here. The audio will be on the Believe Podcast Network's audio network, or podcast network, excuse me, here a little bit later on today. Presented by Bet Online. For Jonathan Stewart, this is Desmond Johnson. You've been watching and listening to the Believe in Panthers podcast here on Believe Podcast Networks. Keep pounding.